Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Greater Lynn. My name is Eileen Cummings and I'm the Vice President of your Board of Trustees. It is my pleasure to welcome you to today's service. Though we are not together physically, we can certainly be together in spirit. Today I will be lighting a chalice that belonged to Linda DeVoe, who loved being a member of our church. I hope that the memory and strength of all those who have gone before us will help to sustain us in these trying times. I will now begin our virtual service as we begin every service by lighting our chalice. Let the Chalice Connect Us by Catherine Callahan. As the chalice is lit, let us come together into sacred space we have created. Let the cares of the day fall away and know that here is a place for quiet reflection, for pause in our lives, for breathing in our true selves. Let what is said and felt here add richness to the dimensions of our lives and spiritual practices. We are strong together in community. We share the experience of being human. Let the warmth of the chalice lit during our time together connect us and carry us into the world. Please join me in the unison affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church, the quest for truth its sacrament, and service its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve human need, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with God.
Hello, this is Mark Lapointe, Director of Community Life and Learning at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Greater Lynn. I hear from folks that one of the most difficult things about dealing with the coronavirus is that we're asked to stay separate from our classmates and teachers, our friends at church and in the neighborhood, sometimes even our own relatives. So let's meet the Toonies. This is Dad and Mom, along with youngest child Nick. Tris over there is the oldest, and that's Phoebe in the middle. All in all, the Toonies are a pretty happy bunch, and they really get along well, and they love spending time together. This is a story about what happened when they couldn't. They do almost everything as a group, from cooking dinner to flying kites, playing board games. Dad is really good at charades, and Phoebe enjoys leading the family in their Friday night sing-along. They really like to be outdoors together and take a walk to the park at least once a week, often stopping for ice cream along the way. Oh, one time they did this mega long bike ride, and Mom got a prize for getting home last. Oh, and then there's a time that Tris and Nick organized a huge camping trip, and they all got sticky on s'mores. One day, while Mom was working in her lab, Phoebe came in looking sad. And then Nick, and then Tris. They all felt sick. One quick look at the purple dots in their face, and Mom knew it was an outbreak of purple pimples, and it was, unfortunately, contagious. This was pretty upsetting, but the family knew they could get through anything together, just like the time the car broke down and they had to carry their beach equipment 2 whole miles. The hardest part, Mom said, was that they would all have to stay separated until the purple pimples were gone and they were no longer contagious. Mom was right. They hated being separated from one another. Phoebe decided that singing show tunes alone just wasn't any fun. And Dad had no one to laugh at his silly dad jokes. Tris soon got bored of playing Candy Crush, and Nick threw a tantrum when he couldn't find the very last puzzle piece he was building. Mom just sighed a lot. One morning during the quarantine, Tris was excited to find a piece of paper slipped under the door. It had a little note that read, "May your day be bright," along with a funny drawing of a little light bulb character at the beach. It was signed, "With love from the Tin Can Network." This made Tris so happy that she sat down right away and began working on a new poem. She had it done in no time at all. Later that afternoon, Nick totally forgot about the puzzle and instead literally jumped for joy when the same note slipped under his door. In addition to the original message was a poem called "Reflections on the Crustacean" by Tris Tooney. Nick thought it was one of her best. The message was signed, "With love from the Tin Can Network," and Tris. Well, of course, this made Nick so happy that he started his own project, building something magnificent that he could share with the family. That evening, the note was slipped under the study door, and Dad practically ran from his comfy chair to pick it up. Yep, the same note with the same poem and silly drawing on it. In addition, it also had this rather detailed diagram showing how to turn a pile of paper clips into a toy car, entitled "Paperclips Car Design, a Nick Tooney Original." Of course, the note was signed, "With love from the Tin Can Network," and Tris, and Nick. Well, Dad dumped his paperclip cup onto his desk and began following the instructions very carefully. That night, just before bedtime, Mom heard some rustling and looked over to see her door open and close very quickly. Wondering if it was just the wind, she headed over to make sure the door was secure when she noticed a piece of paper and something that looked like a paperclip dinosaur? Or maybe a kangaroo, she thought. Mom smiled when she read the note with the greetings and the poem and instructions on making a paperclip car. That's what it was. And then a little joke written in the corner. It was bad, but still made her laugh. And the note was signed, "With love from the Tin Can Network," and Tris, and Nick, and Dad. The next morning, Phoebe was up first, as usual, she thought to herself. And as she was stretching, she saw a tin can with some kind of tubing attached. The tubing, or wire, went out under the door, and she heard what seemed to be some noise coming from it. Under the can was a familiar piece of paper. She read through it, laughing and smiling. Phoebe was delighted at all the additions to her note. The final one was written in Mom's scratchy penmanship and said, "Dear Tin Can Network, thanks for reminding us that we're all always connected by our thoughts and in our hearts. And there are many ways to come together, even in times like this." And the note was signed, "Love from the Tin Can Network," and Tris, and Nick, and Dad, and Mom. We may be physically separated from family, friends, colleagues, neighbors, teachers, and our church community. But we do not have to be isolated emotionally or spiritually. Ask yourself, how can you build your own Tin Can Network? Have a blessed week, everyone. And please, if you need help, reach out.
Wakanda forever. It's actually like a virtual hug that I wanted to greet you with. I'm sitting here in the courtyard, and I hope Mother Nature doesn't turn off the lights too soon. I wanted to be in a familiar and relaxing place to speak to you. I'm Claire Wilson, and I coordinate the pastoral care ministry team. And that team is comprised of Sally Clapp, Bob Daddario, Bonnie Fishman, Ruth Griffin, Gloria Kozlowski, Kelly Slater, and myself. And during the last few weeks, we've been calling everyone in the church directory just to check in, see how folks are doing. And if you haven't gotten a call, I'm wondering if you've maybe made a change since September of 2019. If that's the case, would you call us with an update, please? It's the church office, 595-781 in front, 8836, and we're at extension 16. Even if you feel lonely, if you need groceries or perspective, or you just want to hear a friendly voice, call us. We're there for you. And I can tell you that it's heartening to me to discover that so many of our community of friends have offered to help with rides and deliveries. We're really in this together. I know that you'll be reassured, as all of us on the team have been, making those A to Z calls in the church, that no one has indicated that they or anyone in their circle is ill or has been diagnosed with coronavirus. Not one, no one. So we count our blessings. So here we are, together like never before. It certainly is an exciting time to be alive. I mean, spring is making herself visible. Gardeners are out raking. Kids are out in the church parking lot riding their bikes. And the dog owners are strolling at a safe distance, but also at a more leisurely pace. There are moments when we can truly acknowledge that everything is pretty much all right in our world, all things considered. The drummers have provided a new tune for us to step to, and we are stepping, albeit with gloves and masks and armed with sanitizer. I say these are exciting times because in this electronic era, there are so many ways for us to be in touch, even when we can't. The telephone has been with us since the 1870s. 100 years later, email came into existence. The World Wide Web became popularized in the 1990s. And it hasn't even been 20 years since Facebook became a household word. Zoom conferencing will celebrate its 10th anniversary next year. FaceTime, Snapchat, Skype, so many ways to achieve the next best thing to being there. And being there in the flesh will come again. We can know that and hold on to that without knowing precisely when. In the meantime, the poets were right about absence and fondness. Each of us is taking stock and prioritizing of the circles of our lives, our family and intimates, our friends, neighbors, associates, our community, party, country. The silver lining of this sequester is the reminder that each of us has membership in a variety of ways. It's a good thing to be reminded of our nucleus, who we belong to and who belongs to us. Like never before in most of our lifetimes, we've been given this moment to protect that which is precious and to participate in the higher calling of our neighbor's needs. People you know have been sewing and delivering protective masks to our area hospitals. Creative family and friends have been posting virtual Zumba, art, yoga, guitar, and singing lessons or concerts since we've all been sent to our rooms. It's an exciting time to be reacquainted with the gifts and skills that we have to offer. Parents have been sharing fun ways to engage their at-home children in learning and play, a pleasure that has had to be shared with the busyness of our work lives. Mothers and fathers are calling other parents with tips on how to not pull out their own hair as they adapt to working at home and educating and entertaining their kids and gauging when to shut off the TV news when enough is enough. I've heard the people I've been talking with on the phone say that it feels like we're in the midst of a revolution. And I think they're onto something. It's so easy for the world to draw us out. This is good and necessary for our progress and survival. And at the same time, I'm hearing you say that the pandemic has pushed you back into perspective, finding what is meaningful and precious. Simple conversations with neighbors. Hey, do you need anything? How are you folks doing? I'm going to the grocery. Can I pick you up something? Precious rituals with family have been resurrected, as simple as unhurried meals around the table together, board games, flights of nostalgia, sharing family history, and communicating desires for end of life. These interactions are real, valuable, and enduring. It's taken these couple of weeks as the layers of sanctions have laid upon us to recognize that we've been mourning changes in our juxtaposition to our work, our volunteerism, our play, and civic and spiritual involvement. We've come to recognize a certain complacency about our lives that we may or may not choose to carry forth when this period of isolation has ended. For those of us in the higher risk category, it's sobering to learn that as hospitals are rationing safety supplies that are painfully, slowly being provided, medical ethicists are being forced to triage where to invest those limited resources in favor of greater life quality and expectancy. That is not a reality that I heretofore have ever been asked to consider. Of course, our veterans know this all too well. And consciousness of the rank and file has become sharpened. People who had already been struggling before this blight with ill health or death of a loved one are encountering the nightmare of navigating within systems that have been disrupted and are temporarily uncharted. Uncertainty magnifies their terror and grief. Community empathy and support is vital now more than ever. And like never before in our lifetimes, people, strangers, aware and committed advocates are rallying to identify where our needs are and how we can respond. That higher calling is what resonates with our humanness. It dissolves the illusion of differences, the fearful inclination toward me and mine. Yes, we've all seen the stories of fearful hoarding and grocery shop fistfights, but honestly, we are witness to far more instances of generosity, compassion, and sacrifice. We know nurses and school clerks and garbage collectors who are essential to our well-being and our communities. That recognition may have been lost in the busyness of our day-to-day life pre-corona. Not everyone is at home binging on Netflix. I'm aware that several of my friends engaged in creative and hospitality services have had the bottom of their world drop out suddenly and completely. They belong to me. Their music, their poetry, their theater, their service have nourished my soul like never before. I'm pondering how to respond in some tangible way. There, but for the grace of God. We're in this together like never before. I hear you too saying that the meaning making of this time of tragedy is reawakening an important awareness in you. Yes, we are alone, segregated in our respective bunkers, but we know with cold certainty that we belong. We members of this interdependent web have affiliations near and far. In these precious moments of reflection, we come to be reminded of the unique gifts that we have to offer one another. Principal among these is to listen and to speak your truth, your needs, your fear. It is my belief, validated by the conversations I've been having on the phone with our church staff, leadership, committees, members, and friends, we are together like never before. May it be so.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ruth Griffin, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees. I have a reading for you today. A History of Church, Including Yours, by Sean Neil Barron. One day, your church was born. Maybe it was a gathering of saints, called together for the common worship of a wrathful God, ceaselessly praying between bouts of decrying the evil of Christmas or dancing. Or maybe a few brave souls answered a notice in the newspaper, curiosity piqued by the announcement of a religion where free thinking and tolerance were bedrocks. No matter how it happened, your church was born. A gathering of people, humble, caring, anxious, and quirky all at the same time, who covenanted to be one with another on the journey of life, death, and everything in between. And so it began, a faithful few, beautifully imperfect, called to the central task, that human task, of connecting, loving, and serving. It was just a baby, and yet it was thrust deep into the human condition, tasked to hold minds and souls, bodies and hearts, along the roller derby of disease and birth, infighting and joy, and Christmas pageants, sometimes all of those at the same time. They gathered to hear the world broken open, for insightful sermons, rejuvenating music, and a community whose fierce devotion to each other's well-being rivaled a mama bear's for her cubs. But it wasn't always like that, of course. There were the trying times, and I don't just mean Phyllis or Jack, those stubborn but lovely souls who inhabit the netherworld of committee meetings. No, I mean the trying times. When the church almost split in half over the war of integration, or when the mill left the town vacant, or when the minister crossed that line and the people couldn't speak about it for decades. But somehow you were still here, still in the town common, still the church that everyone recognizes, still the ones that show up every time you were called on, still using the communion silver until you voted to sell it. New people came and they changed things, small things, big things, things that nobody noticed as it happened, until suddenly it was hard to even recognize anything anymore. That was a hard moment, a tearful moment. And other things changed too. The proclamations about God, once heard loud from the public, softened. Wrathful became loving, distant became intimate, mandatory became optional. After the war, the nursery and RE classrooms were overflowing. Each baby dedicated reminded the church of the incredible beauty of life and the gift this community, all huddled around baby, would bestow upon a child. The history of your church is more a story of the determination of love to break forth than it is about tie-dye or chalices, sermon discussions, or social justice committee meetings. The history of the church is the history of human enterprise, evolving in its sights and sounds, yet revolving around its core. The history of your church is the gift of potential and momentum, of baggage and personality. The history of your church is the launch pad from which you spring into action or disarray. Each day, your church is born. And now, as we leave for the day, I would like to give you a parting word. As Far as Our Love Flows, by Annie Forrester. As far as our love flows, as far as our hope grows, as far as our yearning goes, we are no farther one from the other.